Yeah. Everybody got your phones on silent or mute or vibrate or something? Okay, all set. Calling the council meeting to order for the township of Frontenac Island at 10 o'clock. And we'll begin this meeting by acknowledging that we are meeting on the land that has been under the stewardship of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Huron-Wendat for time immemorial. As settlers, we are grateful for the opportunity to meet, live, and play on this land, and we thank all generations of Indigenous peoples from the past to the present who currently continue to extend the sharing of this land with us. We recognize and deeply appreciate their ongoing connection to this place. We also recognize the contribution of the Métis, Inuit, and other Indigenous peoples who now make this region their home and who have both shaped and strengthened this community and our province and country as a whole. As settlers, this recognition of the contributions and ongoing importance of Indigenous peoples to the area must also be clearly and overtly connected to our collective commitment to make the promise and the challenge of truth and reconciliation real in our communities, and to bring justice for murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls across the country. Now, is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof? Being none, we need to adopt the agenda, but there will be an addition to it as well. And ask for the addition first and then the adoption of the agenda, or the agenda first? No, make the addition to the agenda and then we can adopt it. Okay, the addition to the agenda needs to be the Community Safety and Policing Act, which is something that we need to have impact in our budget and needs to be acted on by this municipality in short order. So can I have a secondary for adding that to the agenda? Councillor Ackley. Thank you very much. And Councillor Sean, who's the mover and second. Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, and just to let you know, public comments be made after the draft budget presentation, because then you'll have more information to think about. And then the council will get into full discussion and you'll have your opinions noted by that point too. Okay. The purpose of this meeting, which is the 2024 draft budget presentation. And I'm going to hand it over now to the CEO or the treasurer.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor. Thank you. I'm just going to make a couple brief comments and then I will turn it over to Jesse Collins, our treasurer. So council,
Should I get a mover and seconder before we get started on that? So for introducing us.
we're not making any decisions on this one. It's just
We can
discussion.
skip it?
Yeah, right.
Thank you.
So the first round, council did review in December 4th and 5th. As a result of those meetings, there were some instructions given to staff to further reduce. There's specific line items. Staff have done that, and I will turn it over to Jesse Collins, our treasurer, to take council and members of the public through our presentation, and then Madam Mayor can open it up to council and the public for any questions after the presentation.
Thank you, Vanessa. So I'm just going to go through this presentation today. We're just going to take it slide by slide. If you do have any questions while I'm speaking, I'm more than happy to pause and answer those questions. A little bit easier than getting 14 slides in and going back. So just to start off, the first couple slides here are just kind of a highlight of the timeline process. Really, the only thing changed here is on March 28th. We had this additional meeting with the changes Vanessa spoke of. So at a high level, when we're looking at a budget, and this is for the township overall, what you see here is operationally, we're in line and kind of what's expected for a lot of municipalities. So operationally, it's a 5.43% increase. And then with the capital expenses, that's where we're seeing a lot more of the tax rate increase to cover those costs. When we go through later today, we have options in the presentation. I can also speak to options that aren't in the presentation that might be viable. I have done other calculations, so there will be a few other things I can propose. And we can kind of get some numbers on those. As here, it just has the increase per $100,000 of assessment, but we'll kind of get into all tax rate increases. On the next slide here, you can see the inflation rate and the cost of living allowance for wages. This is when we look back at our operating percentage increase. We are very aligned with last year's inflation plus the cost of living increase that we gave to employees. I think if you look at the salaries, it's overall our actuals in 23 to what we're budgeting for 24 is around the 3% range as well. So operationally, I think the budget has done a great job of, keeping in line with what we're seeing out in the market and what we've passed internally. It's very well aligned. The next tab, so this kind of just breaks down everything. So basically your first 4 columns, you have the revenues. So these are the revenues the departments are bringing in. Personnel costs, we broke up salaries separately so that you can see the cost going to each salary. The salary report that's also provided in today's agenda would also match the 1.74, so you can see a greater breakdown there. The one thing to note, the net capital here, this includes our capital costs after we've applied revenue or reserve transfers. So when we go through the slides, we'll actually have detailed what the full capital cost is. But after we're applying revenue or any reserves transfer, it's $605,700. When we look at the raise by taxation, we have the total number there. Compared to what was raised in 2023, this isn't the tax rate increase, but the actual just levy increase is around 5.2%. And that's again, just overall for the township. And again, that's just looking at what we need to raise by taxation. That's not taking into account the tax rate of the assessment values of properties. Going through, so this next table, and apologies, this is a little bit confusing. Our operating costs, maintenance, repairs, the things that we need to do operating. This table make it look that it's less than our payroll costs. What I realized after the fact, because I did have some questions, the net operating is taking our operating from the tab before, which is around 4.27 million, and it's subtracting the revenues. So the actual operating cost without salaries is 4.2 million. So we get the next, when we subtract the 2.7 or 2.8, that's where we get the 1.429. Just to clarify, the reason for this table is basically show, after revenues, the 3 pieces that make up what we need to raise by taxation. Going to the next tab, so we have the dollar allocation. So you can hear the split with, we see Wolf has the highest with Howe. With how the budget has been split in the past, that general portion of 1,058,000, that is then split 70 Wolf, 30 Howe Island. So it's then further allocated to the 2 groups. This budget is just showing the straight cost before we do any of the allocations. So that's kind of a high level summary of the budget. The next piece we're going to get into is the capital. So if there's no questions, just first on a high level overview what the budget looks like, we can kind of get into what we are looking to spend on capital expenditures. On the next tab, we have capital that we spend on general, Wolf and Howe. There's not a lot in general, and again, this is net. This is after we apply any revenue or reserve transfers. The general we have just close to $21,000. Wolf we're close to 300,000, and Howe is close, just creeping up on 300,000 as well. This page is just to give you a high level summary of what the actual projects are. Again, as we go through the presentation, there is some more detailed information. So starting off first with Wolf. Right now we have 2 options, and I do just want to speak on this slide just for a little bit. So net capital for roads we have is the bulk of option A, and still, near the majority or option B. So there was a different discussion about managers, and there's many different options we can do, but this is what we talked about based on needs and alignment to, possible tax cuts. So the Wolf roads and option A, we have Joy Road baseline and Highway 96. There's a greater loan payment that we have. There wants to be purchase of a mower and then 5 to pass road construction. Wolf Fire, there's vehicle loan repayment, and then there's a couple other, building addition with the new floor and air conditioning, and then Wolf Ferry. This would be new since last budget. At the most previous council meeting, you approved you approved a project for a new storage building for Wolf Ferry. With that, if the budget cost was 180,000, and it was that we could get budget funding of 80% of those. So 180 minus 144, which is 80%, gets us 36. So just speaking on this, we have our two options here. The capital, especially option A, that is a very high tax rate, with 26% to do everything. From what I've seen, some municipalities, we have, a little bit over 10%, but the 26 is fairly high with that outlook. Not included in this presentation, and we can circle back to it, is we haven't fully allocated the wind revenue for 2024. So some of that could be used to drop the tax rate. Just again, a high level. So in the budget, we have $645,000 of wind revenue that we expect for 2024. In the budget's current form, we have allocated 275,000. So there's 370,000 of revenue that has not been allocated from the wind revenue in this year. When looking at the numbers, because it wasn't previously allocated, I wanted to bring it today to your attention if you wanted to make a decision. But let's just say, for example, if you wanted to apply that wind revenue to cover net capital expenditures for Wolf, option A with the highest form, the overall tax rate increase would be 10.86%. So we have money, it's not coming from reserves, it's revenue that right now in the budget, it's just going right to reserves that haven't been allocated. So just want to keep that is an option where we're not pulling from reserves, we're just pulling from expected revenue. But speaking of just to just go with option B, just to kind of stay on track here. Wolf Roads is just Highway 96, and then everything else remains the same across the options. So we just reduced Joy Road and Baseline. So going on to the next tab. So again, this kind of breaks down. Before we were just giving you the net capital numbers. This lets actually see the actual expense. So for the expenditures, when you add all the actual costs, we have $5,000 for the roads, and then the greater payment, the mower, and the bypass road construction. That all equals $600,498. So right now we have $250,000 coming from wind revenue in 24. That is funding. That's part of the 355. The other piece, which actually, Vanessa, do you want to go up to just the overall large table that has everything? One piece that was different, not included in the last budget presentation, you'll look, there's a line called General Township. Basically, this was revenue that we get from supplemental taxes, the revenue we get from interest on taxes and arrears. This is revenue that's not built into when we do the taxation and the levy. So it's additional revenue the township has that wasn't previously allocated. Currently, what I've done with it is I've added that revenue to the budget, and then I put it goes into reserves, and then it goes back out towards the capital projects. So we're just basically taking the money, and it's an in and out, it goes into the reserve and then back on capital. So just keep in mind, the 158,500, 70% of that, so I think the number is around 105, 350. So we have 250 coming from the wind reserve, plus that 105, 350 coming from that other revenue that wasn't previously budgeted. Yes, Madam Mayor.
Which line was that again on the budget summary?
It's a General Township, should be the first line.
Very first, okay.
So on that line, you see the revenue and you see the expense. That's because it's going straight to reserves, and then we're just bringing it out to bring it to capital. So there's on that sheet, it's a $0 tax impact because it's getting allocated to other departments. Going on to Wolf Fire, we have the new flooring and air conditioning and rescue vehicle loan repayment. So this has been kept with last year. We've done a transfer to reserve for the vehicle loan repayment, so that part stayed the same. What's new is the new flooring and air conditioning. So that's what's being funded there. And then finally, Wolf Island Ferry breakdown. So we have the 180,000, which we, again, last council meeting, it was approved to have the project. they fund up to a maximum of $144,000, so there'd be $36,000 we'd have to cover. So just to give a summary on option A, the net capital expenditure again is $296,000. The net operating is $2,137,000. So we get the $2.4 million to be raised by taxation. That's the 26.22% increase, or near $500 for the average household assessment, or $146,000 per 100,000 of assessment. So before I go any further, is there any questions on option A? If not, I'll continue into option B. So basically, option B, we can probably get through this one very quickly. The only change is that we're just doing work on Highway 96, which of the 500,000 in option A, 300,000 was for Highway 96. It was 6 kilometers. The other ones were, I think, were less than this one. So that's where the bulk of the money is. Going through, again, the fire is the same, fair is the same. Option B for taxation impact, there is a typo here that I was noted to me earlier. So the percentages are all fine, but total raised by taxation on the slide should be $2,234,127. So if you want to go to the next slide, Vanessa, basically typo still here. It's just $200,000 less than option A at the overall impact. There's just a slight typo when we were changing the numbers to very different formats. But the percentages on the slide are correct. It's 15.85%, $301.35 for the average assessment, or $88.58 overall. And then I guess while we're speaking on Wolf, this would kind of wrap up the Wolf side. Again, just from discussions before, I know there was some question, what would be like a 1% increase in tax would be around $20,000 in taxation dollars. So that's just some information there. And again, like I said, there is wind revenue money. I think, let me just double check my numbers here, but yeah, so I think if the wind revenue was used to cover like the net capital expenditures, there would still be money left over. I think it'd be around 80,000. I just have to double check that. So there would still be money to spend and still money to put in reserves, because I know we do have the Wolf Island Investment Reserve, which I think a lot of times what I've seen historically is any leftover money from the wind revenue we've been putting to the investment reserve. And that's doing very well for us. I think, it's close to generating $50,000 to $70,000 of income a year. So that's even one head count. I think too, for again, the long-term planning, we do want to consider making sure that reserve is built up. Just in the long run over time, right? If we have guaranteed interest or investment income, that makes budgeting and doing projects more feasible. But yeah, so that covers it. Yes.
What's the dollar amount in it now?
It's currently $1.4 million that we have in investment. We're still getting statements and finance entries for the end, so it might be a little bit higher, but that's the general range where it's at right now. Yeah, yes, Madam Mayor.
Okay, I appreciate you weren't here in that when we had our first meeting back in December and that, but one of the comments was, and I believe it was Councillor Halton that made it, and that we need to have a dedicated meeting towards roads on Wolf Island. And that because there was quite a bit of discussion that including the pieces of road work that were identified, as well as the length of it and the amount of funds around it. We never did have that follow-up meeting, but I did notice for Howe Island, you had a third option, which is a do very little option. It would have been nice to have a third option in here for Wolf as well, and that because the questions still remain about the major expense, the road work on 96, starting at the very and moving forward.
Yes.
And there's never been an agreement on that at this point in time for the needs.
Okay. Thank you for the comment, Madam Mayor. I will say, and maybe I can just check with Vanessa. I think the former Secretary Troy would have done the work on the estimations for the road costs. Yeah. So we do have that. as far as me coming in here in short time, I was, relying kind of on the experts if they, cost that much for the road. I always rely on it, but it is a fair comment. I think again, for any rural municipality, the bulk of your capital expenditures are gonna be to fund the road, so. It's making sure that's as accurate as possible and. Like, yes, you make a fair point with, how we have, we're not gonna fully, fix the roads, but here's what the cost of gravel. It does provide, I guess, more of an option. With that, we could look into it and to determine what would be like a gravel cost for the other roads. But as far as what those numbers today, I wouldn't know them, but.
No, it was, at that point in time, the discussion was, focusing also around the roads needs assessment that was done in July of 2022. That did not have this end of Highway 96 as being a high need at all. Yeah, but anyways,
So.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind speaking to that. If you read the roads needs assessment, and I guess we really put this in our budget wrong. But according to your roads needs assessment, when we retard Chipper Road, that's maintenance. It's not really capital project. And Chipper Road should be done, redone every 7 years somewhere, and that's kind of stretching it. And it's about 55,000 long.
Okay.
So. Reason being, I had discussed this with Troy, our former CAO. Joy Road was hard top. So we should redo it again. Piece of baseline was hard top. We should redo it again. And then to cover our the road in a cycle, we needed to do about 9 years. So that's how we landed up 6. And the thought process was start as far away as you can, work your way back, so you're not driving all that equipment over the ground. Just to give a bit of background.
Yeah, I agree that, that's a very good point, that starting at the end and working back, then they're not driving and killing the new road halfway between is probably a good idea, because chances are that at the furthest point, that's where we're starting. It's not gonna be damaged by the time we get 5 or 7 years from now, because the projected amount of big equipment going across it is not gonna be substantial, so. I think it's a very good point.
and just, and this is a side discussion there, but driving the roads in that 10th line north side isn't even listed as being needed to be done, and it is probably the poorest road that has lots of people on it. And it wouldn't cost much because it is the tar chip type of thing, same as Joy Road. It is the tar chip. And it's 1 kilometer at best. So anyways, that's where the discussion needed to be had, not over the 6 kilometers of 96, because it isn't based on our road need assessment quantities. Okay, so, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So just to then go on to Howe Island, like I said earlier, we do have 3 options here. This one's a little bit different. So just starting with option A, there's 3 different roads with the baseline Spithead and Lighthouse. On the next couple of tabs, we'll have the kilometer amounts. There'd be a mower and there's a loan repayment. Also included in option A is Coulter and Rec. There's the additional costs here. I think that capital projects have spoken in the past, so for the park, the tiller, drill well, and fastening septic system, water purification equipment, some land improvement, which would be land work, landscaping, and then an accessible ramp. With this, what changes in option B is on the roads. Option B just had work done on Howe Island Drive. It was in a much more expensive piece. So option B loses the main road work on baseline Spithead and Lighthouse, but it also then adds in gravel only for those 3 roads, so they're not fully, I guess, neglected in the year. And then on the Coulter and Rec side, only $1,000 remaining for the tiller. And then option C gets rid of How Island Drive's roadwork, and it just brings in the gravel. So that's the only difference between B and C, is just no work on How Island Drive. And then I know there was some questions too, just beforehand, so we have these three options. So there is a significant overall tax rate increase from option B to option C. For example, if we were looking to keep some of that culture and rec capital spending, let's say we took option C and we added back in the 64,500 in full for culture and rec. That would give a tax rate increase of 7.68%. Which is again, still, might be higher than tax rates in years past, but that's for what we've seen with other municipalities, that's aligned with, at least what I've seen for other of our size. So again, just bringing it, it's not up on the screen, but to keep the culture work in option C, it'd be 7.60%. So just kind of going through these options, just so we can kind of see some of the detailed numbers. How roads, again, we have the full capital expenditures here. We have the kilometers again, this is what was provided to me, and then the revenue transfer, this is Howe's portion of that general township money I spoke of earlier, the 158. So that money, again, is just being fully reallocated to help cover some of the capital. Culture and rec, again, we don't have any funding or reserves transferred fully, so the net capital is strictly just what the cost is for culture and rec capital expenditures.
Question.
Yes.
Through you, Mayor, just for clarification, the culture and rec expenditure is to complete the work on the washroom and building that's in the park. I just want
Okay,
people's clarification. Thank you.
thank you. So again, we have the taxation impact with option A. We have a fairly high taxation increase. You can see the impact on the average assessment tax increase for the year and then for 100,000. Going into option B, again, gravel for Spithead, Baseline and Lighthouse, but road work done for How Island Drive. That is again gonna give us a decrease overall. And then, yeah, if the work wasn't done, just on the walkthrough and in the system there. We had here that the tiller would be purchased. And then, so overall taxation impact, that brings down the overall tax rate increase to 17.73%. And then, yeah, average assessment increase of $508 or $86.56 per $100,000 of assessment. And then option C is just gravel work, no road work for How Island Drive. And then culture and rec stays the same. And here again, where I'd say there's quite a jump from option B to C, so there again could be just some discussion of keeping the culture and rec by capital expenditures in, but with as option C, it's a 1.73% increase. Oh,
Sorry, I think just, there's a glare and I'm just trying to,
anyways,
What you get is what you.
is that any kind of better? Not really, eh?
Can we make it any lighter?
Lighter?
Very dark.
It's on white background, so I think it's the,
Maybe is it? Yeah. Okay. That help? That help?
sorry, just.
Move over or move a little closer?
It's easier to pay for the data and watch it on Zoom. I can't mute it entirely though.
No.
All right, continue.
Yep, so again, the next slide after this just compares all three options. Again, providing similar information as provided earlier. So as it stands, those would be the overall tax percentage increases, but as I discussed, there is some middle ground. If we are looking to land somewhere between the 17 and the 1.73, that's definitely possible. So,
Through you, Madam Mayor. So option C, the 1.37 or 73%,
Yeah.
that's plus the county,
yeah, so I.
2
Yeah, I'll speak to that. So this budget presentation was mainly solely focused on the township portion. Just for budgeting purposes, we don't have control over the education and county rates. So we do include numbers, what the overall tax rate would be, including the county and the education. But the purpose of this is just to have more discussion on what we have control over, since we don't have control over the county tax rates. But yeah, you do make a good point that just that it is a good clarification that this is the tax rate increase, township purposes only.
So we would be adding the county and the education
Yeah.
plan
Yeah,
to it, so it wouldn't be 1.73, it'd be more like 7 or something.
yeah, sorry, maybe be more clear, it says that overall tax rate increase for the township, or I should, preface that at the front. But yeah, these numbers were all just township perspective so far.
Thanks.
Just an observation that in 2 days ago, when the provincial budget came down, there is an allocation for culture and recreation for funding grants. That is significant, and I know Mayor Patterson's already identified they want to try to go after it for pool. So there may be opportunity for going after it for finishing off the community center over there on Powell. Not just,
Yeah,
it caught my attention.
thank you, Madam Mayor, that's good to know.
Madam Mayor, if I may. So also since our last meeting, the fire chief and I have been working on, the fire chief has actually submitted a funding application for, it's through the Trillium Grant, for the, recreation building on Howe Island. We've not heard anything back as yet. The deadline was March the 6th to get the funding application in. I'm not sure if they've given any kind of indication, Chief Quinn, with respect to when we may get results back, if we've been awarded or not, but
So through you, Madam Mayor, we expect a reply by June. And it'll be either positive or try again next year.
Then we'll have to have a big sign saying paid for and parked by Trillium and all that stuff. Yes.
Andrew, thank you. For clarification, we've had discussions about this building in the past, and there was some direction or advice given to us that we needed to complete the building in order to satisfy the original application. Is that true?
through you, Madam Mayor. So the chief and I did have a meeting with Infrastructure Ontario with regards to that grant. There was very specific items listed in that grant. To date, we have until this fall to finalize that, that funding initiative. There's one item left on that, which is an electronic scoreboard. That we need to finish to purchase and get installed, otherwise. What was applied for has been met.
Okay, so cost of electronic scoreboard, probably around 7,000.
The Chief Quinn and his dutiful assistant has been working diligently on getting some funding expense costs on, and I don't think it was close to that amount. I think it's coming in a little bit cheaper.
So through you, Madam Mayor, the definition of an electronic scoreboard is huge. What constitutes an electronic scoreboard? So. The wink and the nod from the ministry was proceed with an electronic scoreboard. Let us know what you got, and that will be checkbox off.
Wonderful.
So just one question on that. So then if we do satisfy that, will there be some money come? Or did we already get it?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Excuse me. No, we've not received the funding. That was the $219,000 that we spoke of earlier in the budget meetings. And in order to us to get that, we have to do this final piece of purchase the electronic scoreboard, put in our final reporting, and then in turn they would award money through the Fed and provincial portions.
So the money that was spent up to this point in time was borrowed.
I'm not sure if Deputy Treasurer Clerk could answer that. I believe it was an unfunded amount. I'm not sure where the monies came from. I apologize.
I think it was funded for, money spent so far has been funded from reserves.
From reserves.
Yes.
Okay, so that's why we have a negative in the reserve column in some sections, right? Okay.
Excuse me, a minute. They,
Mhm.
trying to clarity on this, so, with the completion of the park and the submission of the report, is there this amount of money, which is somewhere around 200,000, is that accounted for anywhere, or is that, would that be money currently not accounted for, revenue is currently not accounted?
I'm going to turn that over to Jesse.
Yes. Yes, so me, through you, Madam Mayor, me and Scott are just discussing, with the grants. Even if we hadn't received the money, we would record the revenue, and it would be an accounts receivable that we're owed. With the caveat that we don't meet the criteria, then we no longer have the accounts receivable, and we have to de-recognize the revenue. But the revenue would have been recognized in 2023 as the work was completed. Yeah.
Okay, and the only comment that I take from residents of Powell regarding that specifically was focusing on finishing the drilled well, if nothing else. And that, so the board is great if that's what we need to do to finish off that grant. That was one of the comments, and that if we're looking at tight in the budget at this point in time, and potentially fresh funding opportunity with the Ontario government. Projects. Just a thought. Thank you for your report.
Yeah, no worries.
Is there any more to your report? Did you want to?
There was just one more slide before the closing remarks, and this, what Councilor Ackley was speaking of before, this has the county's impact in education rates. So the average taxation for Wolf Island would be 2,400. Again, this is option A with everything, so this is everything that's in there. When you add in the county education tax rates, or taxation, it goes to 3,648. And then just how, same thing below, for the average household assessment, taxation would be $3,534. With including county and education, it goes to 5,669. So again, it is important to be aware, there is the county and education piece. Those rates have been set, but as far as the presentation above, that's just what we have impact here. As we're not about on balance. The last slide is just closing remarks, so that kind of covers the report. That being said, I do have Excel open, and if there is any questions, if anyone's curious of, if we draw X capital project, what would the tax rate be? Whether it be Wolf or how, if you give me a couple minutes, I can get that figured out for you, so.
Okay.
Madam Mayor,
If we drop the Highway 96 from 500,000 down to 200,000. What would that result in?
That's what that's.
yeah, so just to clarify, Madam Mayor, so right now, Highway 96, the expenditure is $300,000, and year
Yeah,
one.
one of the options. Yeah.
Yeah, so if we reduce that by 100,000, if it was $200,000.
Mhm.
And again, I am doing this on the fly, so it might take a minute or two,
Oh,
but
that's fine.
Yeah.
Because that was part of the discussion in December for that, and the concept of looking for grant money for anything over and above that.
just happy I have Excel to do it, I'm not out here.
Yeah.
Back at Dr. Ben pen and paper.
We're happy for Excel too. just waiting for your answer,
Oh,
so you're not under pressure. Okay, are we ready to
Yeah.
resume?
thank you, Madam Mayor. So I just did it for both options if we reduce Highway 96. So for option A, we're reducing that cost by 100,000. The tax rate would be 21.034%. So going back to, again, what we had before, I think that's close to a 2%, or sorry, not 2%, that's 26 before, so that's like a 5% decrease in tax rate
In option A.
in option A, and then for option B. Option B, it would be decrease it to 10.6% compared to the 15.85%. So again, kind of looking at like the 5% range. With that decrease, if it was, yeah, a reduced amount of work. And again, just going back to your discussions, I feel like, yeah, there was still some discrepancy. Would it be, to reduce this 100,000, are you thinking that we reduce like the amount of kilometers done? Yeah, to reach it?
Yeah, yeah, out of the road needs survey that it had recommended no more than 2 to 2.5 kilometers. A year to be budgeted towards reconstruction, that, and it had it outlined, so that's where I was looking at it from, and then the discussion ran around that, to have pavers come, they need to have larger, and longer pieces to make it worth their while, in which case the argument would be, well, let's build up a reserve, and then in the next year, and that make sure that we have enough going forward, but that was where the discussion was at that point. Councillor Holton?
So, yeah, like I said, if you look at that roads needs study though, this, what we're doing falls under maintenance. Road, like the road construction that you're looking at is redo your road, culverts, base, shoulders, everything. What's proposed is just grinding the top and re-tar and chipping it. And that's considered maintenance for a tar and chip road. So if you go by the roads needs study between our two islands, we should be spending 750,000 a year just on tar and chip to maintain the roads, not.
In an ideal world, that's what they had said.
So the 6 kilometers was just to get to, but Joy Road was tar and chip. And guys took the grader to it last year and got it smooth again. And the same with the piece on the baseline was tar and chip, so I would propose that we should at least do those two, if we can get somebody to come and do 2.5 kilometers.
And what about the 10th line north?
That. I mean, could consider that, I guess that would be. The problem is we've had a bit of a flux with the township staff, so I mean, as far as to get somebody out there to check and see. There had been discussions, even I know previously with, when Rob was here, of just returning that to gravel, the same as, Holiday Point Road.
Mhm.
So,
My only point on that is that it needs to be done something because it is the worst road that you travel on. And that if you go down to it and
Oh,
that
it's-
it beats baseline and it beats Joy Road by a mile. In having,
you were on Joy Road?
yes, I was on today.
Yeah, it's been great, so the top's been taken off of it, it's been graded back, so. We did that to the 10th line road, it would be fine to drive them too. So it's,
Something has
they're
to happen.
options, right, of returning on the gravel, I mean, it's what we decide. The thing for me is Highway 95 and Highway 96, we're probably not going to return to gravel, so. We need to get out there and do some work to them at some point.
Yes, Councillor Saunders.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, I suspect to the Public Works Department. Well, because we may face the same situation on the house. If we return the road to
No
gravel,
side discussion, please. Step out of the room, no side discussion, okay? Thank you.
if we return the road to gravel, is there additional cost, just maintaining, grading, and everything else? Actually, if we make that decision on how, that's one of the things we're gonna decide as well. So, I guess I'm not sure who can answer that question. Do we need additional money in the operating expenses? Excuse me, to maintain that gravel road at a respectable level? I'm not sure who can answer that.
Okay, and
Madam Mayor, I will make a stab at it anyways. In order to maintain gravel roads, they need to be graded and calcium placed on them to stabilize it. Typically, you do that, place the calcium in the springtime, you get them graded up. And that lasts typically for the summer, then you try to do like a fall grading again for the winter maintenance, so. I'm not sure, Chief Quinn can help me with respect to, I'm not sure if we have much money in the budget for calcium under our regular operating expenses, but
We placed it under, if we did the gravel only option, we placed it under that,
so.
that projection, under that option.
So just, so, thank you, Mayor. So just to clarify, it's not something that's we done weekly. This is something that's, will be planned 2, maybe 3 times a year, whatever, and it's not. Thank you, that's the question. Thank you.
Yeah. I think that's something that we all have to keep in mind, because we're not the mainland, we do have lower traffic count. And we do have limits around reasonable funding and that, so we haven't jumped to a higher standard than what we can actually afford to not only put in place, but also to maintain. We have to live within reasonable means, in my view at least. And that, and just going back to the Highway 96. Rather than, I appreciate not tearing up the road with trucks by starting at the foot, and that, I look at Highway 96 between the canal and 10th Line Road as being probably the roughest piece. And that is a common area that we do have lots of people driving towards the foot, so it's more heavily traveled and it is falling apart. And that, so from my perspective, that would be a higher needs than the foot at this point in time, and look the other way, but that's my 2 cents.
Through you, Madam Mayor, just to clarify the CAO's question and Councilor Deputy Mayor, just in looking at our projection, if we were to do the gravel only and we listed it as a broader option, Spithead Lighthouse, and Baseline, we included calcium treatment if those 3 end up being gravel. So it is included.
Good to know. I think at this time, I'd like to allow for the comments to come from the public so that we can, if there's anything that influences or twigs us and we can resume it from the council perspective. Okay, are there any comments from the public on the matters at hand at this point in time? Because I won't be given a second point in time after this is budget and you've heard the presentation. So this will be your time if you'd like to speak up. Is there anybody online with a hand up? Anybody?
Yeah.
Okay, we've got a couple hands. Elaine Cooperman. You need to identify your name and your address for the clerk, please.
Elaine Koopmans, 6 Janet Lane, Wolf Island. Regarding Highway 96, I agree that the area around 10th Line is really bad. The township does as much as it can with filling potholes, but just the nature of pothole filling, it doesn't last. I think it makes more sense to do the worst area first. If you want to do a continuous, I would start towards the village and work towards the foot. That is going to get the most traffic. It's going to get the most benefit for people. I'm concerned that if you start at the foot, by the time you get to 10th Line where it's really deteriorated, it's only going to be gravel. And that just, to me, it makes the most sense to do the part closer to the village where the most people are going to get the benefit from it. Thank you.
Bruce Hicks. Bruce, you need to unmute maybe? Bruce, we can come back to you if you're having challenges there. But you need to unmute. Are you unmuting him or is he? Okay, you have to do it in the bottom left-hand corner, Bruce. There's a microphone with a red line through it. You click on that and that'll unmute you. Okay, we'll give you a bit of time. Anybody here in the community?
Sure.
Okay, step forward, state your name and your address.
Mike Bromley, 171 Helen's Lane, Wolf Island. So this is a issue that, I got kind of a runaround for a month. It concerns the Upper Canada Fuel Depot. We own that equipment here, but we have a contract with Upper Canada Fuels
Okay,
to fill it and maintain it.
is this budget related that you're
It
talking?
is
Okay.
budget related.
Okay,
I wouldn't be saying it unless
Okay.
it was. And they use a third-party biller for their credit card, which connects to our township internet wirelessly. To the township garage, and it goes in and out. I don't know if council's aware of this, but Upper Canada charges $269.10 automatically as a pre-authorized charge whenever you go to fill up. It doesn't tell you that. Under federal law, you're supposed to be notified when pre-authorized and be given an option to select 50, 100, 250, whatever, it just defaults to whatever. They can't tell me why it defaults to 269.10, but the problem that's now encountering is that there's so much credit card fraud. I did have someone come and visit. They filled up their car, they had no choice, they put about $40 worth in, and then they proceeded down the road. And when they went to check into the hotel that they booked, they couldn't because their card was beyond its limit, which it shouldn't have been. Upper Canada has fessed up and said that they have to manually clear the hold, but they shut down Friday afternoon, so it could be Monday afternoon before they get around to clearing that hold on the card. The owner of Upper Canada Fuels, Brett Perrin, said that he's been, these were his words, pestering Wolf Island to upgrade their electronic controls so that it would be in compliance, but I have no idea who it is. And he wouldn't talked to me, he did it through someone else that works for Upper Canada. So I don't know if there's anything in the budget to address that, but because we own that equipment, I'm kind of concerned, especially getting into the summer season, that we could be having issues. It seems to be something that's not in our control, and yet it seems to be something that we have to do to satisfy Upper Canada. Don't know who's involved in that with the township. But it's something we're gonna have to look at if we own that equipment.
Thank you very much for that information. I wasn't aware of it, and
The 26910 gets flagged as co-op, right? So because it's such an odd amount,
Yeah.
the banks are gonna start doing them.
okay. Thank you very much for the information, and the CAO and treasurer have made note of this, and maybe you'll have a report or something ready for us for the next meeting. Or at least more information on them. Item, anybody else? Okay,
Sheila McDonald, 670 Road 96, full time. Just I don't understand, I guess, in looking at the road work, why Joy Road would be a priority. It's a very small road, very few people on it. I'm not really understanding why it would be a high priority to do that work.
okay, Councillor Halton?
The only reason being that it was a hard top road. And it was in such bad shape that they turned it to gravel, and so we're just trying to cover what was hard top, you know.
Could it not stay gravel?
I
Could it not stay gravel?
guess
Could.
that's an option, yeah.
One good piece, we have lots of gravel. We got to stockpile it at this point in time, right?
Not a lot of,
We got a lot of gravel.
not a lot of
Have
gravel,
have we got,
not a lot of gravel.
have we got Bruce, have you figured out how to get unmuted there, Bruce, yet? Or do you just have your hand up by accident? Yeah. Okay. I think we're gonna have to move on, Bruce. Okay, anybody else? All right, now we can go back, and Marcel, did you have your hand up? Did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, I'd like to comment on that 10th line road. They say they want to redo the hard top on this one. Before they do the hard top on this one, I would consider rebuilding the base on this one, because I've been driving this road for 15 years, and putting a new hard top on this one would not be a wise investment.
Okay, so that you're suggesting is needing a real road construction.
It needs a real road construction, because
Yeah, it is, in my opinion, it is one of the worst roads we got, so. We're not in disagreement, at least I'm not. But- Okay, now back to council. Any more comments on the budget presentation? Councillor Dubois.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I see this as being only a couple of choices in our books here, being more roads, we have greater payments, more payments, and we have to bypass, and so we're sort of stuck in those three pieces. Wolf Fire, the same thing, loan payments gotta be made, and maintenance for the floor and air conditioning has to be done. Storage garage, no brainer, we're getting funding from MTO, so really the only thing we gotta basically look at for Wolf is how much road work we wanna do. That's what it's coming down to. And based on the amount of tax increase, I don't want to kill everybody down with the high increases, but I mean, what happens if we did no road work, just did our payments? What's the follow-up from that?
Through you, Madam Mayor, it was just the, it's just the payments, I don't have the exact number, but they'd be closer to around like 10%. I can get you the exact number after, but for Wolf, I did do calculations, like if there was no capital expenditure at all, so this scenario is taking out the fire and ferry, so it's not directly accurate. It's a 10.26% taxation or tax rate, so with that being said, again, if there is road work that needs to be done, there is a discussion on the wind revenue that hasn't been allocated. Because we do have, again, 370,000 not from reserves, that's revenue we're gonna get in June for 2024. We have 370,000 of that unallocated. So if there is dire road work, I think it's still, fiscally responsible to use revenue we're getting in. We're not, destroying reserves to do the road work. We're just not building them up as much. I guess just in a general comment, I know too, coming in, it's a lot to kind of wrap my head around the township, there's a lot going on. But I know me and Vanessa have talked, getting together like longer term, plans, we should, have a 5-10 year capital plan. Where we know what our reserves are and, we don't need to have the discussions as much on roads because we plan, 3-4 years out. We're gonna do X road and we'll have X dollars. I think this year, the bit of the challenge is not having that plan and kind of, coming here to figure out which roads to do of importance. So again, the wind revenue, it's right now, if the 370,000, that's just going into our reserves and that can be saved for future projects. But depending on the need that we have that 370 to be brought in for this. And again, that in that scenario, it brings the tax rate, like when you're around 10%. From what I've seen, I've been on a few calls with other municipalities our size. The general tax rate increase for a lot of municipalities is this year between like the 7 and 10%. I'd say that's a lot we're seeing for kind of small rural municipalities. And I will add that I'm not sourcing direct stats. This is just I've had calls and there have been polls internally. It's in the 5 to 10% range. I would really say overall, every municipality with the cost with the inflation. There has been this year more increases in other years, but again, not just a direct stat looking at all municipalities, they fall into that. I'm just saying this from my discussion, from what I've seen this with a few that I've talked with. So, yes, so to answer your question, I think it's determining which road work is done, and if we want a reasonable tax rate, because again, with the 20% was presented, but I think that's also. That's a very high increase. We do have the wind revenue to kind of bring it to a more reasonable spot.
One last question, Aaron. With the transfer that when users do this road work, what's left in our reserves? What's going to actually be the reserve piggy bank?
Yeah, so if you give me a second after your question, I can go back. I think here actually let me do this.
Take whatever time you need, we'd rather have accurate
Yeah,
figures
yeah.
than guesses. We're here for the duration.
Yeah, so for example, if we look at option A, we have 370 of wind revenue unallocated, and we only have 296 of net capital. If we were to fully cover that net capital with the wind reserve, we'd still have $72,852 left over to go into reserves. Keep in mind, we do have the reserves, which I believe you guys all got a copy of. That doesn't include the surplus deficit for 2023. So there was some leftover wind money as of now for last year. Again, there might be some entries. But with that being said, we still have the investment reserve, which is quite healthy, and that's accumulating money. So in this scenario, we could cover capital and we still have $73,000 to add towards the investment. So there's still money left over. And again, not to push you one way or the other. If we're just looking at options to get, a reasonable tax rate and do the capital road work, I think the current year with revenue is the best option. Just as we kind of build up longer term financial plans for the reserves. Because again, it's still getting into it, but I think as far as financial planning, reserves are a planning tool, and I don't know if they're being used as effective as we could use them. Just as far as what's going in and what's going out every year. So during kind of my 10-year period, I was like kind of looking at to actually develop a plan and kind of make more informed decisions. So I hope that answers your question.
Thanks, Jesse.
Hey, Councillor Holton.
So I think we have to kind of go backwards and figure out where we want to land on tax increase, and we'll stretch that as far as we can budget for roads. If we can't get somebody to come and do 3 kilometers, we can set that money aside for next year and we can add to it. First, starting at the foot or starting in the village on Highway 96, it makes no difference to me. I had this discussion with my wife last night. I said, I struggle with this because I grew up on a dirt road, four corners my whole life. The road's been rough. Personally, it doesn't matter. You can return them all to gravel. My problem is, if we want to maintain what we have, we need that money. And we can't be living off that wind tower money because we're not sure what's gonna happen in 5 years. We may not have that money, and so far we've lived off. We've taken in somewhere around 8.5 million from the wind towers. We should have had half of the bank. My idea would be spend half, keep half. In case it runs out, but like I said, personally, it doesn't matter. But I think maybe if we go at it and say, this is a reasonable amount for a tax increase, this is what we had budgeted for roads, we'll do what we can with it and kind of work backwards. So that would be my comment.
Counselor Ackland?
No, I'm the same as Dan, like, I think he's, kind of weigh what sections you really wanna do and where you wanna start, and if it makes more sense to start up at the 10th rather on the end where it's the worst and you head towards the village or go away, again, a lot of roads used to be gravel and, you know, you did get them to there, I just hate to see us take away a road that was tar and chip and make it back to gravel. But sometimes it gets to that point, that you gotta get rid of it. And you gotta start again, like Marcel says, and some roads need a little bit more improvement than others, so. I think over here, he's gotta look at a little bigger picture, and it, like Jesse said, if you have the money. To spend on sections, use it in the right spot, right?
Counselor Saunders?
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, let me thank staff for putting all this together. I'm thinking back to a year ago, we were doing all this and we had more questions than answers. I'm feeling much better, I guess, in terms of understanding where we are financially and where we're going forward. So with that said, two thoughts in terms of how, I'm not sure what the process will be here, Madam Mayor, but I'm thinking we should do the minimum, respecting staff's request to give you an opportunity to take a longer look at where we are financially. I'm still not sure where we are on reserves. We've heard before that we're bad as a township, or we're not in good shape as a township. But then I hear some numbers that sound like we're pretty good, so I think we need some time to understand where we are with our reserves. I would be in favor of an option that the treasurer did provide, which is, I guess, option B, which is I guess put a pause on our movement forward on improving the roads on how. Those ones that are currently gravel, maintain them. I'm feeling better about the explanation about how you can maintain them. I thought this would be weekly grading and all that kind of stuff. So if it's not that, I feel better about that. But I do believe we should finish up the building in the park. I feel like we have so many things that are half done. And this would be the time, let's get things back to where they should be, and then we can move forward after that. There's just so many loose ends hanging out, I think we need to get those loose ends cleaned up. So if I could, Madam Mayor, then I'm not sure what the process is, how do we decide which of these options and we look over?
This is mainly just comments at this point in time because it's a draft. And it'll be coming back to us at the next meeting. April 8th. So they've listened to the comments and I think, they should come back with the figures and that.
And yeah, just through you, Madam Mayor, just through, I did say it before, so yeah, doing what Deputy Mayor Saunders suggested. That would be a 7.68% tax rate increase for Howell overall. Which is lower than one last year, I believe. And this again doesn't have any special levy or whatnot, so that kind of puts us in a kind of more reasonable range what we're seeing for other municipalities and completes the project. Through you, Madam Mayor, Councilor Ackley.
Is the 7.68 including the county? And
No. Again, the presentation,
Yeah.
I don't, we have the overall county impact. I do have what the rate increase is, but yeah, this portion is just township.
Yeah, the county is 2.98. And I think the school boards are held to 1%, is it?
Another quick question, Madam Mayor. So the 7.68%, how'd you get to that figure with the money that we have and split up between wherever?
Yeah, so the calculation, you always kind of start with the expenses, so we determine, what do we need to raise by tax? And then we go to the overall assessment value for Hell Island. And then that gets us our tax rate, and then we compare it for the average household assessment year over year and what the tax rate increase is for that. So the starting base is the Howe expenses plus the allocation 30% of general. Because in the budget, for example, under how we are taking some of like the general township revenue that I noted earlier, and like that's being used to decrease some of our capital's expenses. But the starting base is always going to be like, what are the expenses that determines, what the tax and revenue raise.
Okay.
Yes. So follow-up question to the treasurer. The one document, with option C was 1.7% increase.
Yeah, that's 1.72, I believe, so it was pulled up.
Yeah,
7.
two different points is a lot. But we're adding roughly $60,000 to that if we add the recreational stuff, and it jumps to 7.7.
So 7.68% with the recreational costs added to option C.
Seems significant.
Yeah.
$60,000 increase.
Yeah, the overall, like, I'm just gonna pull it up.
Well, he's pulling that up, and I'll just reiterate, the provincial budget actually has a new envelope of funding for recreation. And that potentially we might be able to make a good application, and they haven't come up with the criteria yet. But it seems like a viable option too, to keep in mind. Just let him answer, and then I'll get to you, Councillor Action. Are you ready? Eddie?
1 second.
Okay, no worries. Okay.
But again, if we don't finish this, we don't get our money, or are we really gonna get the money that we're supposed to get the money?
It's only the one thing that you need to finish to wrap up that original.
So the big question is, if we put the money in, we're gonna get the money back, and we use that money for something else.
It's actually,
So why would we put the taxes up that much if we know the money's coming?
okay, I'll let him explain to you.
After you could repeat the question, that was.
Okay, you're wondering if we get that $219,000
Yeah.
that has been on the books as a deficit that we funded from somewhere. I asked whether it was a loan, and we're not really sure.
Yeah, so
If we get that money, it basically just wipes it off the books.
clarification, it's not a deficit on our books. When we get grants and there's conditions, we recognize the revenue before we receive the funds. So what we received last year will go into our working surplus or deficit. When we get the money, we have an accounts receivable, cash goes up and the accounts receivable goes down, and there's no like net income impact. Once we get the money, so it's not gonna have an impact on our budget because it was already accounted for in 2023.
We haven't found $219,000. We're just paying off what we basically have already spent when we finish that.
Yeah.
But if there's new spending, we can apply for grant or new stuff.
Yeah, and just to answer your question, the large percentage increase, right now with option C, there's just over like $1 million to be raised for taxation. So if we're adding, 60% or $64,000, that's where you kind of get like the jump there.
All right, now I have a few questions. One is, the municipal tax rate has finally been identified, and it's supposed to kick in at some point in time with the assessment, the map. And that, how much are you looking at for an increase that we may get naturally by having the homes reassessed at the up to less, it's not actually still gonna be 8 years behind what should be assessed. And that the tax rate for value of a home, but that value assessment has been finally updated, I understood.
Myra, from what I understand, we had recent conversations with Impact, and from what we're told, the change in assessment value probably won't go until after the next election.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah, it's, Impact is just kind of waiting for direction, but I think they're ready to go, but yeah, it's been, because of COVID, it being delayed.
Business volume still based on 2016.
it is 2016, okay. I was kind of under the impression that they made that jump forward to 2020 and that, but it is not. Okay, the second piece of that is now that we have you, and Vanessa in position that I've always been, very highly anticipating increased opportunity to apply for the significant grants and that, because we do have our ducks in a row, we do have an asset management plan in place. We've got our roads needs assessment, and there are envelopes of funding that we can apply for and that. So I'm hoping that over the course of the year and that with identified projects and that we can get some of that money in the bank rather than, because that's how small municipalities survive, not so much the large. That, on that note too, and we can revisit it as the year goes on, and that during the course of last year, I raised various options that often didn't get support. Maybe the council will think a little bit more sober on other avenues of raising funds, which could include licensing of trailers, municipal accommodation tax, the short-term rental licensing that I had suggested, things of that nature, because when I went to conferences with other mayors and that, I found very interesting options that they would do. They would have those things in place and it would go into reserve. So when the province came forward, for an example, electric vehicle charging station, they will pay 75%, the municipality has to come up 25%. That's exactly the reserve that they went to. And that, so whenever there was a matching piece, which often is the catch with the province, that if you put up 30%, they'll give you 70%. That's how they actually had little pools of money, because the projects that, even if it's road related, whether it's widening the roads, improving the roads, you can make the argument that this is for economic development and tourism, et cetera, and that. But it really was helpful in that, and it wasn't a burden on the average taxpayer. Those that are doing short-term rentals, and God bless them, they're making money and everything else and taking long-term rentals off the market, which is another argument altogether. In the meantime, it's an opportunity that other municipalities are taking full advantage of, and we haven't. So I'll just put that out to council that we might want to think about revisiting something like that to help bring in revenues without burdening the ordinary resident. Okay. Councilor Saunders.
Thank you, Heather. I'm gonna go back to the comment that the treasurer made. And I don't want to argue with a guy who has a degree and an Excel spreadsheet. But perhaps after the meeting, you could clarify how the addition of the culture and recreation, which is 64,500. When we add that, that's the same amount of I'm looking at option C.
Yep.
And again, I'd ask you to address this afterwards. The 58,000 is the current one. We double that. I don't know how it goes from 1.73% to 7.68%. So I would ask for a follow-up on that at some point.
Okay, perfect, yeah, we can, yeah, we can have discussions on that. The part of with the tax rate increase too, does take into account assessment value year over year, so when we're calculating the tax rate increase, that's like a portion of the calculation, so. That if you're just trying to take one number and the other, divide it by a percentage, it might be a little bit different.
Okay. And here's the question about percentage, and that triggered my last point that I meant to mention. Because Councillor Halton mentioned starting from the beginning, and that's often how budgets are, you know, given a goal out that, you know, we're going to keep it at 3%, or we're going to keep it at 5%, et cetera, and that. I would suggest 4%. We know that we did have inflation, we did have cost of living, et cetera, with the caveat that we chase every grant that there is available, so that we optimize and any of our projects that we can get funding for, we'll move forward on or put in the reserve, and we'll act on it the next year. And that, and as I said, hopefully some will revisit the concept, because when I think of even trailer licensing that they do on Manitoulin Island, they charge basically $750 for regular season every year for trailers. They make a lot of money. And in our case, perhaps $1,000, and that would legitimize people that have their empty lot, they're putting a trailer or a mobile home on right now, using it as a cottage, but still just paying as an empty lot. So it helps to balance it, because we are a tourism area, and it would be seen as fair by many residents, because they have complained to me repeatedly, and I don't blame them, that some are getting more of a free ride than others, but that's just something that we need to discuss as council.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I know, again, because the tax rates are set separately for Wolf and Howe. Howe is definitely, again, we can fall into kind of more of that range. When we're looking at Wolf, even just from operation without capital, we're already at 10.8%, so there would have to be cuts operationally. Or using, again, to help bring it down, using the full liquid revenue in 2024. I agree with you that, you know, as a township, there's probably more we can do with regards to getting grants and funding and looking at programs to generate revenue. As of right now in the budget, if we don't have those processes lined up or know where to expect it, it'd be hard to budget those revenues when we don't have a clear idea. We could, you know, there's definitely a possibility. I think you're right there. There are opportunities out there that we can apply to improve. But right now, those aren't worked in the budget, and the only hesitant thing is if we bank on those revenues and they don't materialize.
That's where we don't spend first.
So that's just my comments on that, but yeah, it's because I mean, again, if you really wanted less, like you could do no capital and apply wind revenue to operation costs, and that would bring it down. But it's kind of, you know, what's council prerogative on what to spend, but as it is right now, like 4% tax rate increase for Wolf would probably require significant cuts. And I don't know if it'd be possible currently with the capital expenditures.
It might be a goal to work towards, but going back to the wind turbine funds, and that, as you noted, and as Councillor Holton noted, and that it's unfortunate that we've been raiding the piggy bank all the way along.
Yeah.
And so I'm not a big fan of raiding the piggy bank with the wind turbine funds, and that it really is better, not only from the rainy day perspective, but if we had 4 million in the bank right now, and we'd have it in GIC or bonds, and that we'd be subsidizing this budget significantly the way many other municipalities are currently. So we need to be smarter at what we set aside and make sure that we always have that stability there, because it has been significant, and it may be more significant in a couple of years, or it may disappear. We don't know. And that for sure, but we do have a contract, and I'm hoping that it actually increases any that we have in for us, but we had lots of questions that are still needing to be answered. Councillor Atwood.
How many taxable properties is there on now?
So the overall assessment value of Howe Island is 217,679,000. As far as like residential households that are taxed, the number is 368.
Is that Wolf Island or?
Oh.
No, Wolf Island.
Oh, so that was how you.
Yeah, Wolf.
Oh, well,
Oh, you asked now.
So did I? Sorry.
yeah, no, I'll go ahead. Through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, so total local number of households is 918. And so just like the residential part that we're taxing, that's $312,314. There's also commercial and farm properties as well that will be in the 918 number.
Okay, Councillor Ackley.
Just throw it out there, you know, we didn't do a levy, and people weren't really mad in the long run on our island. They were very happy. It was a one-time deal. And it improved. That's $500,000 you're gonna raise if you did a $500 thing like we did on Howe Island. I hate to throw it out there, but you know, it's not raising your tax for the next year. You know, your tax is gonna go up this much probably this year, but if you have the little extra, That might get you all the way through the village from that.
You're suggesting a levy for a specific project? which is
I
what you're
would like,
looking-
you guys need to fix your roads, and that's the big thing I'm hearing here is, I think people want road improvement. You know, there's lots of other things that you want, but I think you wanna do your main roads to keep your main roads up. And it is a tax increase of probably 4 or 5%, technically the $500, but it's not gonna add and carry over next year. Like ours ended up being 23%, and we paid the $500. So last year, after 18, I think it was just under 18% last year, and we paid the $500. So we took a big hit to do some great improvements, and we moved forward, you know, and all in all, I think Highlanders are so far pretty happy. So just I hate to throw it out there, but you know, that's an option.
Mhm. Yeah. No. Counselor Holton?
I just have a calculation, if you don't mind, I'm just gonna ask them to.
Sure.
Yeah.
Take a look at it, see if it makes sense there.
I'll double check that calculation. I pulled it from the December one,
Just a number on one of the charts that when I added it up, was different than what the total was, so I didn't know if it made a difference. I wanted them, maybe it doesn't make any difference.
Okay.
Through you, Madam Mayor, so he was just referring to the 2023 raised by taxation column on the full table chart expenditure breakdown. I'll double check the numbers, I have it in here, this table was from Excel, so I'll double check to make sure, what you calculated, we can talk about after, but as far as that, and maybe Scott, you can confirm the raised by taxation numbers if you like from last year, but the tax rate that we have now is based on the 2024 column, so it's taking whatever we had last year to calculate, or sorry, it's taking what we need this year to calculate the tax rate that we have, and it's comparing to last year's tax rate, so again, I'll double check that column, I don't think it's an impact, I know here you have it calculating greater than the one that's there, but I do think overall there is an expenditure increase in 24 over 23, but I will double check.
Yeah, that was my question, was just if we raise, you don't seem to, if my number is right, then we actually need to raise less taxes this year than we did last year. According to that chart.
Yeah, so I guess right now, like in Excel, like that table of the number at the bottom is just like a sum formula of all the numbers above, and that's what got the 355, 53. So I'm not getting the number you calculated, but we can double check that afterwards.
Maybe over the course of the lunchtime
Yeah,
period, and
yeah,
that, which will be coming up very soon. I have one more question that, and okay, and should Scott go now potentially? The lunch,
Let me just check with Jason.
Okay,
So
the
here,
lunch is
for
for-
the motion.
okay,
There it is.
Counselor Saunders?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We focused our discussion on capital, and we really haven't talked about operational. I wanted to point out that when Mr. Quinn took over his responsibilities for public works on Howe Island, he provided the CEO at the time an extensive report on ways to reduce cost. They included taking some services in-house. That included grass cutting and garbage removal. And I don't know whether or not both of those or any one of those have been addressed in the operational.
So through you, I can answer, at least with the waste, I think that was more recent and I can let, I speak on it, but is this the most recent proposal to bring the waste collection in-house?
I believe that's, I guess I'm looking for clarification as where that's in research.
Yeah, I'll let Mike speak, I don't believe that's in the budget. I think to bring it in-house, there would actually be like an increase in cost in year one, and then we would have fairly significant savings there onwards, but I'll let Mike talk just because he would have done the budget for it.
Okay,
So, through you, Madam Mayor, and Vanessa, just help me with this one, but the first draft of this budget included a number that was basically the number that we were paying, under the previous contract. So contracted service, and we knew that it was this amount in any given year, so we put into this budget that amount. Now, since then, and please cut me off if I'm taking too much time, but I want to be really clear about something. The contract for the garbage waste collection on Howe Island is expiring on April of 2024, so it's coming up. In preparation for the budget discussions through the CAO, we thought we needed to cast the net out there to allow those that were interested to bid on going forward. Put that out there so that we had an accurate, up-to-date number. We were very, very clear in terms of what the requirements of the tender needed to be. I don't want to go too far into the weeds, but frankly, there were some arrangements made prior to any of us that didn't quite line up with the contract. So there have been some practices that we really needed to assess and take a look at. Going forward, so we put it out there, we contacted interested individuals that might want to bid, and we walked them through what the new world order might look like come May of 2024, so that everybody was operating off the same page and they knew exactly what the tender entailed going forward. So there was a tender process, the bids came back, but we felt that to be really transparent as well, and we knew that Deputy Mayor Saunders would ask us this question. We said, what would it look like if that particular service was brought in-house? Does it necessarily need to be contracted out? So we did a number of calculations on that. Now, there was lots of small community rumor and lots of chat about it. What needs to be said very clearly for the record is, and there's concern about, well, is it taken on too much and who would do it and how would we do it? We calculated utilizing our part-time township employees, part-time / casual. So we're not running our roads department workers too thin. We don't, the skies are falling, they're maybe not available, they're plowing snow, whatever. On a Monday morning, the garbage needs to be collected, so we said, in our pool of existing employees, part-time and casual, could we make this happen? And then we factored in that, we factored in the salaries, we factored in, an 8-hour day, we factored in increase of insurance, or insurance requirements, tipping fees, and there's a document, a report before you that speaks about the purchase of a trailer in order to make all of this happen. So the end of the exercise, we have put forward to council numbers that are reflective of an in-house operation. There's a little sidebar, quite honestly, and I'll be completely transparent. It generated some interest, a lot of interest within our part-time casual pool, because it gave them some additional work for the township, and it gave them opportunities to do things that are slightly different on a Monday. A lot of them are ferry employees that are part-time, that go back and forth, to get, gets a little monotonous. And so in the big picture, we're thinking, how do we keep them hooked? How do we keep them interested in staying with the township? And this would be one small cog in that big wheel. So we looked at all the variables and we provided in a report what this would cost. Year one, there's a small capital investment, which would be the purchase of the trailer. And then year two and onward, the numbers before council, and we have identified some cost savings that are there, should that be deemed to be a reasonable next step. Thanks to our new treasurer, he looked at the numbers, he really looked at the numbers that I had provided, reassessed and felt that they were pretty solid, in your words, Jesse, thank you, and so, the option is there. Contracted through the bidding tendering process, there's two numbers in the report from two different companies and a number before council that they need to bring it in-house for the year one cost and then a year two projection.
Okay. Thank you.
And so, first of all, I want to thank all of us that took this, because any opportunity we can find to reduce cost has got to be, welcomed, so I thank you for that. But my basic question is, which numbers are in the operating budget? Is the contract, whatever it would work out for this year, whatever was given, whatever the successful bid was, or are the numbers in there for township staff and payroll? I'm not sure what numbers are in there.
Through you, Madam Mayor, it is, the contracted services that is in the budget.
Thank you.
So there will be a savings that's been identified if we went the other way. That'd be good. Okay, just while I'm thinking of it, one other thing needs to be added into the budget, and I'll speak to it after lunch and that. But under the emergency services, an additional $5,000 needs to be added into the budget for the new Community Policing Safety Act. That a board is gonna have to be formed with the 7 municipalities that contract currently with Leeds, and we're one of them. And we're all expected to put 5,000 into the kitty in that, because we have to be self-funding, and that's our best guess for the first year. So just one thinking of it, that needs to be added in, and that's the appropriate area that gets put in. But we'll have further discussion on that later. Okay, now, how are we doing on the lunch piece?
Lisa indicated she will be leaving at about 11:45, so we've got a few more minutes if you'd like to continue discussion.
Okay, Councillor Dublonaki, any further thoughts?
No, echo, sorry, Madam Mayor, I want to echo what Councillor Saunders said, great work, guys, to get everything put together for us. Yeah, I want you to wave that magic wand and keep our tax increases low somehow. I want the roads done so you can make it work for me.
Have you got a percentage in mind?
I think around 10%, 12% mark, everything inclusive, county, school, everything.
Councillor Hope?
Yeah, I don't, wherever it lands, I guess. I guess people need to decide what they want. Do they want more service, better roads, or just let them go and go to gravel? As far as short-term rentals accommodation tax, I did quite a bit of looking into it, and for places our size, they are usually losses by the time we administer them and do all the work. The trailer one, I totally agree with you. I think that's a funding opportunity. My problem is that's been a 40-year saga, that the trailer bylaw has been a mess over here. So I want to get to the point where we have time to do it right, or hopefully do it right. So that would be my position on those.
Did you have a percentage in mind
No,
for tax increase?
no. I'm fine with 25, I'm fine with 2, so.
Okay, Councillor Ackley?
Mr. Wolf, we're talking about, correct?
No, it's wherever you like to talk to.
Oh, well, I'd like to talk about Howe Island. We'd like to finish some projects and whatever, we'd like to be fair on, our numbers, you know, and be exact on what we're paying the county, what we're paying the education, to add to it. In no way do I want to exceed 7%.
7% inclusive, you mean?
That's everybody,
Okay, inclusive. Okay.
and that's Ben and me. Oh, damn, that's.
Councillor Saunders, you have a figure in mind?
I think if we, with all this work, if we can come close to the rate of inflation, which was 6.7, was that?
Yeah, I think 6.8.
If we can get close to that, so 5% is a wonderful number, 7.5, probably maybe more realistic. for whatever, so that's the kind of ballpark I'm thinking.
Inclusive.
Yes, our ratepayers really don't care what's the bottom number, right? And that's what people focus on, so that all inclusive, yes.
Okay, and for myself and that, I know at the county and that it was thrown out at the start that it was 3% that the budget needed to work towards, and they did come in under 3%. It was given a ballpark and that, so I can agree with Councillor Saunders in that on the inclusive of 5 to 7.5%, and that to work towards, and that for the Wolf Island side. For the Howell side, I see even lower in that. I think there's opportunity to get grant money for the project that's needed over there. And so I like that option C for them. I think they've taken a severe enough hit last year. And I think taking a bit of a break is a good thing, and especially by next year, and that we'll have a much better grasp of how many grants and potential new tax dollars we'll have in that, and we can always move forward, because nothing is falling apart in dramatic fashion, with the exception of number 10 on the north. And I will agree, that is a road that seems to be falling apart. But I think that would make me comfortable in that if you could work towards that as an inclusive number as well. And I'm not just focusing on tech, and that wherever you need to look at for getting towards that area to make me happier. Councillor Holton?
So then we need to include how we're gonna budget for our grant match, because most of them are 50-50. So if we're gonna apply for grants, we better budget 300,000 to 400,000 to match.
Yeah, that's where, for example, I had conversations with the mayor of Thunder Bay and that, and they use the municipal accommodation tax. That's exactly the reserve that they use for virtually all the grant match. And they have a lot more accommodations than we have.
I think
But
if
the
you,
trade
yes,
off
I
might-
think if you do the municipal accommodation and do some homework on it, you're gonna see it's a net loss.
It hasn't been for Candy Muckway.
Yes, Gananoque has quite a few more accommodations than
Well,
we
they-
have.
yeah.
So the administration costs are gonna be relatively
It
the
just,
same, but the guy needs set everything up. I've done quite a bit of homework on it, so.
yeah, yeah.
You
so
can do yours and show me the
Yeah.
top.
That's a good, I think that lots more discussion, fulsome discussion would be very beneficial to us. Because anywhere we can expand the base without being on the weight of the ordinary resident, and yet still move forward is a good thing, and that would help to us in the long term to continue to be able to match any of the opportunities for provincial funding or federal funding.
So back to the question at hand, or it's this year, we aren't going to have any of that. So are we going to budget then a certain amount for matching grants?
If I may, Madam Mayor, and Justin, you can pipe in and help me out. I don't believe we would need to budget for it in the 2024 budget. If there's funding available, typically it runs over a 1 to 2 year period. Is that correct, Jesse?
Yeah.
So if there's funding opportunities in 2024 that we apply for, we receive the funding, come this fall, when we do our 2025 budget and get in place, then we can include it in our 2025 budget to do the project next year.
So that's great. But we're robbing from Peter to pay Paul, because that's coming out of next year's budget. So just keep in mind, like I said, at the end of the day, doesn't really matter to me that much, but just remember that if we need 300,000 to match grants that we got this year, and it's coming out of next year's budget, already you're looking at 5-10%, somewhere in that range, or that we've already spent from the year before, so just something to keep in mind.
Okay. So what I've heard in summary in that for the idea of you to work towards. 3 of us have been in the around the 7% mark. So 5 to 7.5%, 5 to 7.5%, 7%, and that's all inclusive. one 10 to 12% inclusive. And one a little broader, 2 to 25%.
There's more.
So, but I think it would be very helpful in that we'll have our lunch and we still have more of the meeting. If we're still waiting on the lunch to arrive though, I can give a brief overview of this piece about the police safety, Community Safety and Policing Act. In 2019, the provincial ministry decided that there need to be community boards set up, funded by the municipality. The majority of the members will be the municipality. We get our policing services with Leeds, OPP, Leeds County. So that earns us 1 seat. There's 7 municipalities, so there will be 7 people from the pool of council. And that 1 from each municipality that's expected. There will be 2 provincial appointees, the province will be responsible for picking those 2. There will be 2 community members total from the 7. So there will be an application process in the very near future that goes out to all 7 municipalities for people that want to volunteer to get on the police services board. You can't have a background as a criminal lawyer, either defense or prosecutor. You can't have a policing background, and that what they want to have is people that are non-biased and individualized. Anybody applying will need to provide a CPIC, a criminal check, and it would be certainly good to have a fairly clean criminal check, not if you're applying for the police services board. There will be a seat awarded to the Indigenous, and that's going to be a process as well. Now, the bad news is, while this was all being created in 2019, it takes effect as of April 1st, 2024, and I heard about it last week. There has not apparently been a lot of preparation done in many of the municipalities. However, there are a few that have, and so that's wonderful. And at the next meeting, and I'll be bringing forth a motion that for formal appointing of someone from our council and that to be on that board. The term will run just obviously to the end of the councillor's term. There's at least 8 hours worth of training. This, as I said, is self-funded, and that even though it's mandated by the province, we have to come up with the money. So the other mayors and I had a discussion. We were all thinking 5,000 each if we kick in should be enough to get us up and running. We may be light, we may have a little bit more. That's great. We'll know more by next year. But we are sort of caught behind the gun. But we aren't alone in that, and that's the good news. And that there is the only free thing about this is a consultant that the province has provided for helping to get it up and going. And so I'd like the councillors to consider if you are interested in that. If you have experience of setting up boards and things of that nature, all the better. There's only been, well, 2 mayors so far and 1 councillor from other areas have been appointed, so there's still 4 of us that are, finding somebody. But the next meeting will be April the 5th. There'll be a Zoom meeting and the consultant will be involved with that. The meeting expectations vary. It has to be at least quarterly. And it can be as frequent as you need to, and especially at the start of setting up a board, I'd expect it to be a little bit more frequently. Right now, I'm involved in the tri-board KFL&A for public health, and we've just gotten the go-ahead, it seems, to move forward on that, and it's been an interesting process. And that this one is a little bit more straightforward because at least there is a consultant being provided. And there's a bit of a template, and you do share with 7 municipalities. But again, it will be a startup of a board, and that's so you're getting all the policies and bylaws and things like that in place. There's really, the important stuff for the first year or two to get it right. Councillor Ackley.
So can we take a vote, nominate somebody?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I will have a report coming to the April 8th meeting, giving a background, and then we can appoint at that time.
Oh, I thought that to be.
Yeah.
So no direction, say.
No, that's why I just wanted to give you a heads up and think about it, because there's time involved, training involved. And an expectation of being on a start. It's not that it's gonna be a well-oiled machine at the start. But it needs to be compliant, and there will be an application process soon for community members. We may get a community member from this area, but it's gained 2 people from 7 communities, so I have no idea. All right,
Madam Mayor?
yes,
Councilor Hoffman.
Councillor Hutton.
Just. This is mandated by the province,
Yes.
obviously, we have to join it, so the 5,000, just to make sure I have it right, 5,000 for one time.
No,
Startup
it's what we guessed would be cost for the first year. And we will continue to have to self-fund. We'll have an idea after that, hopefully. What we have to have is administrative support. One of the mayors actually has sat on a police services board as a secretary, so that's really good. And we need to find out location. There's gonna be honorariums, there's gonna be travel and decisions on how frequently they meet. As well as covering the expenses of even the provincial appointees and community members.
What is the purpose of it?
It's just legislated, and the idea behind it. I'll read you a little bit here.
Just, I mean, just general, I just want to
Yep.
know, is it for one community policing in our town here?
Yeah.
Or is it
Uh,
just,
It's,
Huh? Yeah.
the intent is to have, an oversight of OPP and ensure that it is meeting the needs of the communities that they are servicing. It's from section 67 of the CSPA requires there's an OPP detachment board or more than one OPP detachment board. They could actually create 2. We're not going to do that. Each municipality and First Nation community receiving OPP services will have an opportunity to participate in the OPP detachment board. If you don't participate, you're still going to get the bill. And that, an OPP detachment board be required to, among other things, advise the detachment commander with respect to policing provided the detachment and on the development of local action plans, consult with the commissioner on the selection and monitoring the performance of the detachment commander, and provide an annual board to municipalities of band council. So for example, in comparison to what I do on the public health and that, the only employee that the board has is the MOH CEO. Same as here, we only have the CAO as our employee. Well, the detachment commander is the one that this board will oversee. In addition to the training required all boards under the Act, detachment board members are required to successfully complete training on the roles of the board and responsibilities, and they must abide by the code of conduct that is within the regulation, the OP framework.
Okay.
Lots of details. It's a whole lot of reading to it, I'll tell you that. Because it is an official act and it is, it's gonna be interesting, and it's being set up across the province, and, I'm glad that at least 1 or 2 have been better informed than what we have, but we've had a transition. And we can play catch up. And it starts by finding the right person that can, contribute to the setup of this board. So I think at this point in time,
She has left, she should be back shortly, so
okay,
if we want to take a break.
I think we will call a break now at 11:54. And we will resume at 1 o'clock.
Well, we have Thursday.
Okay. Correction, there's been a request that we have a shorter than 1 hour lunch.
Yes.
Okay, half hour?
Yeah.
Would that work? Okay, we'll resume at 12:30.
This is where. Oh,
Okay, now it's 12:35. We're going to resume our meeting. We left off at the draft budget presentation and our comments thereof. Is there any more comments that need to be made at this time? Counselor, Treasurer.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to say thank you for the feedback today. It was very helpful to actually kind of have this conversation and get a clear direction going forward. So just, yeah, thanks for all the questions, and we'll come back with those changes and see a better spot.
Thank you very much. Madam Mayor, yes.
So if council can please provide, what it is that they're looking for from staff to bring back on April the 8th, is it the actual final that we would be passing on April the 8th, or if just for staff, if we can get some direction, please.
Okay. And with that, Counselor Jablonski.
I have nothing else to add to this report, thank you.
Okay, Counselor Holden.
I would hope that, I mean, we're getting pretty late, I would hope that we could pass something on April 8th.
Okay, Counselor Ackley.
I'm same opinion. I think we should just move on and come to those great decisions.
Okay, Counselor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor. We've given, the treasurer a lot of different options and stuff like that. So I'm assuming it comes back and still be draft, because that's been approved. Is there a way that we can suggest during the meeting, minor changes be made and then on the go and then approve that? That's the final?
Through you, Madam Mayor. I will, direct that question to Jackson and see what his level of comfort is with respect to that.
Yeah, so through you, Madam Mayor, I think coming back, I do have like the target rate percentages, so pretty much to get within the range, I'll present a budget that gets us there. I think we're gonna have of the auction discussion we had before. But I think it's gonna be, you know, what can we do this year that's reasonable, that's within the tax rate that we want? Instead of, you know, 3 options, we'll come in and I'll present like the final option to you. At that point, you know, you can still decide that, you know, maybe you're not happy and needs a slight change. But I hope that one is gonna be a little bit more direct and targeted to get something passed.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I have a question, 2 points on that. One is, when do we have to have this budget submitted to municipal affairs?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I'll have to get back to you on the exact deadline for that. It just meant they're not aware.
Okay, and for the other point, for Saunders raised, I was thinking, because it is budget, that we should do it really in first and second reading type of thing for April the 8th. You don't have to send in as the third reading in case there's some other changes or amendments that have come to light. And that, so if we aren't bumping into the deadline for submission to the municipal affairs. Madam Clerk, are you aware of what the deadline might be?
Not off the top of my head, I apologize, no.
Okay, and that, because you don't have to do it all in one fell swoop, and that, because it will be the first time that Cow Island, other than by Zoom, and that has had any opportunities just to be on the safe side, because transparency weighs a lot, except missing a deadline with the government. But you can still work on, under the auspices, and I'm thinking it's the first and second draft that may be approved, and just making sure that we have enough transparency in place. Set my suggestion. So based on this agenda, I need to have a mover and a seconder to accept the administration report number AD 005-24, which is the detailed salary breakdown of the department. And that administration report number AD 0024 regarding the detailed salary breakdown we received for information. Could I have a mover and a seconder for that, please? Councillor Ackley moved, Councillor Saunders second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Okay, now we have a report from Public Works. BW 003-24 Howe Island waste collection. that the Public Works Report PW 003-24 Howe Island Waste Collection be received and filed. Further, the council directs staff to proceed with the recommendation of bringing the service in-house to realize the cost savings. I think we have to have that spoken to. I have a mover and a second to get this on the table. Councillor Ackley, seconded by Councillor Colton, and I assume Chief Quinn, are you going to be speaking?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I mean, really, I'm sorry I drifted earlier. We really addressed this and put forward what we needed to. My apologies if I was out of order, but I don't think there's anything further for me to add.
Okay. I'll go around the table and then I'll ask my question. Councillor Jablonski?
No, thank you, Madam, the information I got from Mike this morning was good.
Okay, Councillor Holden?
So, based on this, Island Property Management, 35,000 change that's for 1 year.
No, that's for through you, Madam Mayor, that is for 8 months. So when it was tendered for the 8-month period, so that going forward, we can then, it'll have to be re-tendered, but we would then be working in a calendar year. Where the old contract expired midway through. So we're simply saying, let's line it up with the calendar year.
And your cost is for the same period, what you're showing here.
Correct.
Yeah. So I get, given her financial situation, I wonder maybe about, Latin Island Property Management carry on for the rest of this year, and, then maybe we can move to, in-house pickup after that. That's just my.
Okay, Councillor Ackley?
Again, yeah, it appears that he's dropped his price from last year and there's different outlook on what the job titles now. I assume, and the price is close in comparison. You know, I know you got fuel costs down for $100 to drive around the island, to drive to the waste site and back. That's being lenient. We gotta take into factors all the rest for the island part of it, that we'd have insurances. You know, maybe different training for these people. And then what if somebody gets hurt because they're doing a whole different job than they're normally doing? There's lots of factors in it, and again, I think it's better off that we let Island Property Management. He's dropped his price significantly to continue doing it for this year, and we, another 1-year contract. And then we review it next year to see if the dollar figures are the same.
Councillor Saunders?
Remember, I'm not in favor of this recommendation. I support Councillor Ackley's comments, but to that. Basically, what I see is it's a wash this year. I mean, we can argue about dollars here and there, but basically it's a wash this year. So I would prefer this decision to the next calendar year, and where we have a chance to kind of sort things out. Begin realizing the savings next year. That's the situation. I do believe we just have so much on the go right now. I think we need to settle down, minimize the number of changes. We're already taking grass cutting in-house, settle it down a bit, and give us 8 months of experience to determine whether or not this is the right thing we want to take in-house.
Okay. I don't see it as a wash. It looks like we've already paid out about 75,000, and what you're anticipating is 51,000 in the first year and 42,000 by the second year. Which means it's the savings all the way along by taking it in-house. Am I reading that wrong?
No, you're correct.
Okay, so to me, we're saving 25,000 basically off the hook, even if we're just, you know, taking that capital cost of the new piece of the trailer and that, which is significant, 22,000, and we save that, so I don't have a difficulty with it. All of that. Oh, okay.
So through you, Madam Mayor, and in conversation with the CAO, we will need to, because again, keep in mind, this is for an 8-month period, the balance of 2024. in the fall of 2024, we will need to re-tender it and rework the numbers. But again, the rationale was to line this up with a calendar year.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No, I was just gonna clarify for Deputy Mayor Saunders, it wouldn't be a deferral on this. My recommendation would be you amend the further that, amend that section. And, if you're looking to remove it, I would say, and further that council direct staff to award the tender to Island Property Management in the amount of 35,856 for the remaining 35 weeks of this year for 2024. Would be my recommendation. That's what,
That's
we're
what,
looking to do.
that's what I was gonna say.
I'm glad we're on the same page.
So you're looking for a mover and a seconder, and you want to write that amendment on the case? You're moving it, and Councillor Ackley will second it. Another round of discussion, Councillor Jablonski. Hey, Councillor Halton.
I would be in favor of that. Give us another 6, 8 months to get our feet under us and see where we go from there.
Councillor Ackley.
Same again. We're about 6 or 8 months to get her back up.
That's what,
As soon as it's written, we'll do the vote on the amendment first, and then we'll go back to the first motion. It's while she's doing that, I realized when we went through the first, report that I didn't go around the table for comments. It was carried. But if you feel that we've been shortchanged on providing any comments to that, I would hear it now, and I think we can accommodate them. Councillor Jablonski? Councillor Halton? Okay. Okay, so I read the room right. First, it's done writing, and I'll have her read it since I was back at the top of the writing.
Yes, thank you. So the amendment is moved by Deputy Mayor Saunders, seconded by Councillor Ackley, that the second clause be removed from this motion and replaced with that council direct staff will award the Howe Island waste collection tender to Island Property Management in the amount of 35,856.32 for the remaining 35 weeks of 2024. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor? The amendment is carried. Now ready for the first one? The motion is now moved by Councillor Ackley, seconded by Councillor Fulton, that Public Works Report number PW 003-24, Howe Island waste collection be received and filed. And further that council directs staff to award the Howe Island waste collection tender to Island Property Management in the amount of 35,856.32 for the remaining 35 weeks of 2024. Any further questions or discussion? All those in favor? Motion is carried.
Thank you. Okay, now, building report number BD 001-24 2024, proposed building permit fee structure. I need a mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Jablonski and Councillor Saunders, thank you. And who's gonna speak to that, myself?
Okay, so you want me to go through this? I'm on there.
You're on deck.
This bylaw is to increase our fees. Well, you want me to generalize it because you guys all read it? Okay, the reason we're doing this increase is we're expecting a slowdown in the construction for 2024, and we want to bring our fees to the actual value of what it costs to build a house. And the reason for that is we're doing budgets. And the way we were set up, we were under evaluating the value of the house being built. And I contacted MPAC, and they were using the value of the firm for taxes. And it might take 5-6 years before they fully evaluate the house. They go back to evaluate the house. So the township was losing money on the tax base on new constructions. So that's one of the reasons we're raising these fees. And on the second page, I guess you guys must have it on you see the how the fees went up and each item, how much it went up for each items, okay? So the cost of building a house is in the range of $400 a square foot. And we were around 250 before that. So. And when you're talking, now a 2,000 square foot house right now is around $1 million to build, okay? So we were, we were very, a lot under, too low, under the existing, the real value. And the reason, another reason we're raising is the cost of operating the building department. When I left, we had some reserves. And when I came back, it cost more to operate the department, and we ended up with more reserve than when I left, so I got, something has to be verified here. But, I'm expecting that, if we raise this, to this stage, the fees, we will not have to go as deep in the reserve as we did. Okay, and eventually we will become able to put money back in the reserve. The building code allows us to operate the building department, and we are allowed to charge whatever we need to charge to cover our costs and build a reserve for the years that you do not have enough income to cover the expense. In the township this size, you want between $100,000 and $200,000 in reserves. And in addition, the building department took on the septic inspections. So for the septic inspection, we stayed with the value that South Frontenac was using. And we're gonna go with that for 1 year. See where our expenses are, and then we'll readjust the expense in 1 year. And we added at the end of the fee schedule, we added some sentences to allow us to say, when the cost of a permit cannot be established by the square foot or the costs appear inadequate for the size of the project. The real cost of the project is to be estimated by the building department. And the estimated value will be used for the permit cost. If the listed costs aren't contested by the owner or builder, they can submit an invoice, all their invoice of material and labor for evaluation. When the building is self-built, the expected cost of labor is to be used. So that means if a guy builds it himself, the value is on the value of the project. Even if it costs him less to build, it's the value of the project the building department takes for the building fee, okay? Not because his mother gave him 100,000 and it's gonna cost him $1 of his pocket, he's gonna build a house, it's the value of the project, it's not what it's gonna cost him out of his pocket, okay? Now, if the value of the bills and the value of the project come with 10% of the building department evaluation or the evaluation we had, we want to adjust the fee. If it's greater than that, and there's good proof that it's greater than that, we might refund the fee, or we keep the option of hiring a real estate to evaluate the project. And see if it will go with the value of the valuation. Okay? You follow me? Okay, and then we got reinspection fees. Will be subtracted from the security deposit. And renewal fees will be deducted from the security deposit if they're not paid in time. And another reason we went to the building department evaluating the project, if it's not adequately evaluated by the fees, is we ran into a project this fall. The project value was about $2.9 million. And the permit was issued on the value of the project for $700,000, the way the old bylaws were written. So we put in these clauses to be able to make sure that we get the real value of the project. And on that at the end of the day, we settled for $2.5 million on that project, and we recovered over $17,000 in fees. Anybody has any questions?
Councillor Jablonski?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Marcel, thanks for bringing this to our attention. Just curious, so the building permit is issued before the building begins the work, correct? I mean,
Yeah.
Okay, so during construction, okay, we're gonna build a 200 or 20,000 or 2,000 square foot home, gonna cost $1 million. What happens in the cost of construction if the owner starts changing things minorly? He all of a sudden increase the building to 1.5 million. How do you reflect that back into the?
Well, when you do a change, according to building code, you have to do an addendum to your plans.
Okay, right.
Okay, and when an addendum to the plan comes, then we'll reevaluate what's the cost of that addendum. Then if the costs tremendously increase the cost of the project, we will go get the fees to compress it.
I see, so at the end of the project, one more evaluation, what this project costs to build, that's the finished building permit amount.
Yeah, let's say the guy wants to build a house for $1 million. And he has gold in the bathroom and everything and makes some changes, put some extra bathrooms in. He brings me an addendum and it's $2 million for the house. Well, then that he's gonna owe us for the difference of 1% of the value or whatever the changes.
And one last question, Madam Mayor, Mike, what, these original numbers you have here, how old are these numbers?
Oh, 2013, I think.
Oh, so we're like 11 years behind the schedule here.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
we were due to change that, but something happened, somebody left, so.
Thank you.
Councillor Holton?
I don't. necessary evil, I guess. I mean, people don't like having to pay for any permit, but, we also have to cover the costs.
Well, if we don't cover our costs,
Yeah,
okay, you're gonna pay for the guy that's
Yeah.
building house on the road.
Councillor Ryan?
No, I totally agree. Gotta do what we gotta do to stay with the times. But, you know, our Councilor Dwight said, you know, we're years and years behind schedule. So some increase is needed.
Okay, Councillor Saunders?
Hey, Mayor, I want to thank our chief building inspector for bringing this forward. Again, this is an example where what we're seeing in the last 6 months is staff continue to come forward, addressing issues that have been ongoing, lingering, contracts not understood, fee schedule or other date. I want to thank all staff for bringing this forward to our attention and getting our ship rerouted or refloated or whatever that comes.
And yes, thank you very much for, I'm always in favor of seeing if we can fund somewhere else other than on the back of the ordinary residence. And if you're able to build, you should be paying a reasonable amount. I just have a quick question that just because I know in the offing that potential of trailer park being set up, none of this would apply to anything that's already pre-made or fabricated somewhere outside.
Trailer park,
Yeah,
well, we don't have a trailer park in this township.
we actually have Hilo Hickory as a campground area.
We got a campground. A campground is for temporary use. Okay. I don't know the bylaw that regulates that campground yet. Okay. The problem we have in this township is trailers all over the township and nobody wants to do nothing about it. We tried, but we told not to. We tried, but we told not to, so.
Okay, so you're saying, have you looked at the trailer?
Oh, I know where they all are.
No, the bylaw.
Hey,
Since the council has voiced an appetite now to possibly review the trailer bylaw, that
Oh,
have you
yeah.
taken the time to look at that?
yeah, I had some issues that I brought up to the CEO about that trailer bylaw. I personally, I think it's not enforceable, but.
Okay. Okay, we have a mover and a seconder, no other questions? That the building report number BB 001-24 proposed building permit fee increase be received for information, and further that bylaw number 014-20, excuse me, 24 be presented. Sure. First and second. First and second, okay, and that's in the first line. First and second. Yeah. Apologies. No worries. And further, the bylaw 014-24 be presented for first and second reading. That's where I need to put in it, sorry. First and second readings and final, not final passage. So for first and second reading. All those in favor? Carried. Okay. Now we're going to move into closed section.
Yes, I promise not here, because you had already spoken about.
I already-
emergency services.
Yes, and that's, and just as I spoke before about the community safety board. There's a Zoom meeting on April the 5th. We won't have made a bylaw appointing anybody before that, but if anybody has any interest, please contact myself and the CAO and we'll get you onto the Zoom. That, and by April 8th, we gotta put a name to it. Okay? Now, I need a mover and a seconder that the special meeting of council adjourn for a closed meeting of council at 1:05 PM. Regarding the municipal act section 239K, a position plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiation carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board, specifically the procedures and instructions regarding negotiations. And a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Ackley. Okay, and thank you very much. You're gonna have to leave now.
Thanks, Charlie.
Thank you.
So.
2:30.
Yeah. Oh, really?
All set? Yep, okay. Now we're at the section of bylaws. I need a mover and a seconder that the first and second reading be given to bylaw number 014-24, being a bylaw to establish a fees and fares schedule for building permit fees and administrative charges for the township of Frontenac Isles. Sir Ackley and Soms. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Okay. And mover and a seconder that 3 readings and final passage, and that's when we change to 2 readings.
No, this is the 3 readings and final passage for the confirmatory.
Okay, okay. So mover and seconder that 3 readings and final passage be granted for bylaw 015-24, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of a special meeting of council. Councillor Ackley, seconded by Councillor Hall. All those in favor? Carried. And a mover and a seconder that we adjourn the special meeting of council at 13:53. Mover and a seconder. Councillor Ackley, Councillor Saunders. All those in favor? Thank you very much. Okay, 2 more pages here. Hopefully, I'll go back. Can we turn this to vote? Well, we're gonna be on time for the 2:30.